Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we are talking about the supernatural horror film Pet Sematary, directed by Mary Lambert, and released April 21st, 1989.
Ooh, I saw this one twice in theaters.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really good on the big screen. I'd like to see it again on the big screen. There's just so much about it, I think, that seeing it in that way made it an even bigger deal, plus the fact that it was filmed in Maine. Mm-hmm. It was a really big deal because we could go and see all the different places.
Yeah, nice.
So it was cool. They didn't make it easy because there were a few places that were harder to get to that I never did end up seeing, but I did see some of the big ones.
That's
so
cool.
I thought it's cool. It's funny when I sent you a text message to say, hey, remember Pet Sematary next week, the autocorrect changed it to Pet Seminary.
Yeah, that's the weird spin-off movie we're doing next week.
Mm-hmm.
Where cats become priests.
I know. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's even funnier with an AI-generated photo of a cat dressed up as a priest. It killed me. Like, that I was ready for, actually. I'm like, I think I'm ready for that movie, because it looks hilarious. Yeah, this is going to be a good one to talk about, because I love Stephen King. I really enjoy the adaptations for the most part, and I do feel tied to this movie because he demanded that it be filmed in Maine. And I appreciate that because not many of his films were done here, even though they picked places that looked closely like it could be Maine. Not a lot of them were actually filmed here. So I'm excited to get to talk about this one just because, yeah, I feel a little bit close to it.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one. Of course, we'll talk about it at the end of the episode as well. But for now, yes, we have not done a double dip this season, and we're getting very much to the end, so we didn't forget, and yeah.
You didn't think we were going to get through this season without doing a double dip? Come on, we have to.
So much fun. So yeah, so this will be a double dip between this one and then the 2019 remake we will do next week, which I've seen that one. This was the first time I've watched this original.
You had not seen this one yet?
I had not.
Oh my gosh. Then I feel like you got a real treat of a movie because this one was pretty well done. At least for that time, it stood up pretty well. It was super creepy. There are parts of this that when you say Pet Sematary 1998, I just go right straight in my head and think, oh my God, that one particular scene or two scenes. Because you can't get it out of your head once you start thinking about it. It's like, oh no, that was rough in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Especially the dog ways. Because it's a pet cemetery. That's very rough. Rough. No.
Yeah.
Bad joke. Stupid joke. Speaking of stupid jokes, as heavy and serious as this movie is, my notes are mostly just jokes, way more than they need to be. I don't know. It's just the mode I was in today. I don't know.
You were in a joke mood. Okay.
I was.
So...
I've been watching way too much Mystery Science Theater. I blame Boggy Creek last week, because I think I even mentioned I was going to go and watch the Boggy Creek 2 MST3K episode, and then I've just been on an MST3K kick since then.
And how did that Boggy Creek 2 viewing go?
That was great. It was hilarious.
Oh boy.
One character that just does not put his shirt on ever, and takes every opportunity to take it off. It's very weird.
Was it hot there? Maybe he was sweating. He needed to take it off.
I don't know. I mean, it didn't matter. Indoors. It didn't matter where he was at.
It was indoors. Okay.
Anywhere he was at. He just, like, sit down to, like, get comfortable, and he's like, well, the shirt's coming off now. It's ridiculous.
Is that a Southern thing?
Yeah, especially in, like, in the country. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you run around and take your shirt off all the time. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Got
as kids, we never wore shirts. Ever.
Ever?
Or
Really?
shoes. No, yeah.
No?
Mm.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So I really enjoyed watching this, but yeah, my notes are going to be real jokey just because that's my brain right now. But I'll talk about the other stuff as well, for sure.
Well, I hope you keep this good humor going until you come up here in a couple of weeks, because we have that huge podcasting meetup. And so it'll be great if you're in that fun, jokey mood.
Yeah, we'll see. Guess I'm just gonna have to keep watching Mystery Science Theater a bunch.
That is such a chore, right?
If somebody's got to do it. I've got a list already. I think I'm gonna watch Santos versus the Vampire Women tonight. That's my plan.
Man. You know that Manos is one of my favorites, but so is Ma Mitchell.
Mitchell's great.
I love that one too. And that is the extent of any singing you will ever get from me on this podcast. I apologize if I broke the mirrors in your house or gave your ears a fright. But that's how it goes.
No. We're going to do a musical episode. Not talk about a musical movie. We've done that. No, where we do all our notes is in musical form. Everything is song. We're going to do that one day.
Oh boy. Are you sure you want to do that?
Why not?
I know you can do it.
Anything.
I really don't think our listeners want to hear me try to sing.
Yeah, we'll do it anyway. Oh, man. Anyway, Pet Sematary. Let's get to that.
All right. So let's start off with production notes. As I mentioned earlier, this was filmed in Hancock. That's actually where the house is. Bangor and Bucksport, Maine. It's based on the 1983 novel of the same name by the amazing Stephen King. He wrote the script for this one as well. Mary Lambert, who directed this one, also directed the 1992 sequel, Pet Sematary 2. This was the first filmed screenplay that Stephen King had adapted from one of his own novels. As is customary with these movies, Stephen King has a cameo in the film. He is a priest presiding over a funeral.
Yes, that's one of my notes that I mentioned. I was just like, that was a beautiful service, Reverend King. Father Stephen, if you will.
So the budget for this one was $11.5 million, and it grossed $89.5 million at the box office. It's 103 minutes long. Pake, bring on a synopsis.
All right. A father discovers an ancient burial ground with the power to raise the dead. But when tragedy strikes, is it the answer he really needs?
You know how I respond to that? With 4 simple words. Sometimes dead is better.
Mm-hmm.
I should have said that much more in a Maine accent, I think. Sometimes dead is better.
You gotta sound like Judd.
Good old Fred Gwynn. He was great.
So, yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed him. I have a lot to say about Judd. We will get to that. But of course, got a lot to say about a lot of characters. We'll jump around all over the place because there's a lot of major plot points that I'll get to later with smaller characters, literally and figuratively.
I know where you're going with that. He actually, that character is a big part of that one scene that I think of every time someone mentions this movie.
Yeah. But, yeah, we'll do what we usually do. Character arcs, character stories. And I feel like the best place to start is obviously that father that I mentioned in that synopsis, Louis Creed.
Yes, Father of the Year.
Mm-hmm. which in my notes I kept calling him Dale for the first 15 minutes of the movie because that's the actor's name, and then I realized, oh wait, no, then somebody called him Lewis, and I was like, oh, let me fix that. I got that mixed up for some reason.
Do you know, sometimes I will just put a nickname and that's the same nickname I use through the whole movie until I realize, oh wait, the name is different. Why am I calling them something ridiculous? But I can't help it because I've already done it the entire time. So that's who they are.
Yep. All right.
So yes, Lewis Creed.
Start there. I mean, of course, we could talk about the family moving in there, which, I mean, a little more, family, the Creed family, but getting Lewis specifically. But first, they move into this new house. He's the doctor. Classic story of the new doctor moves into town, and then spiders take. Oh wait, no, that's a different movie. And then no,
you know what movie that is? We've done it on this podcast. Yes. In fact, there's a remake coming.
Ooh, interesting. But they just moved in, and Ellie's already broken the tire swing, and little Gage is drawn to the road, just running out there with arms wide open. Sorry, I had to do it. They are the Creeds.
Did you have to?
I had to. Absolutely had to. Had no choice. But luckily the neighbor Judd is there to scoop him up this time.
Judd can't be there all the time.
No.
Someone has to watch the baby!
The baby! But then the other problem or thing that they have to worry about, other than Gage, is their cat, Church, which I've always thought it's such a weird name for a cat. I know that he's named, it's Churchill, short for Churchill. He's based off of, named after Winston Churchill. Which, did Ellie name him? Because that is a weird name for her to come up with. Where did she get that? I don't know.
No, I just get the opinion maybe the parents bought the cat when Ellie was born and they named it Winston Churchill. Because even though they say it's Ellie's cat, I'm just imagining...
It's your cat now.
It's your cat. That was very good, Pake. Very good accent right there.
But we learn pretty quickly about this town that trucks are a real damn menace. Here,
sometimes,
right? The first procedure that Lewis has to do at his job at the hospital is a dude that's killed by a truck. Well, I mean, he doesn't die immediately. He has to say some real creepy shit, cryptic stuff first. Then he dies.
Pascal.
But I mean, what's like the pitch for coming here? Welcome to Murder Truck, Maine. What a beautiful and serene place to get flattened. We have trucks everywhere, killing everyone.
No, just in rural Maine, because logging trucks and things
that's what
like
I said. Is that we didn't get the name of the town, so I called it Murder Truck, Maine.
It's
they
Ludlow.
Live in Murder Truck.
No, it's Ludlow. That's the name of it. Hancock, if you want the real name.
Mm-hmm.
I've driven through that town a bunch of times.
Yeah, we last week we were sort of in my neck of the woods, even though I haven't been to Falk. But update on that though. For those that listened last week, I did talk to my dad about that, and he's totally down for a day trip to Falk. So we might have to do that and come back, report back at some point.
I really want to know what he thinks about it.
He's in on the idea.
Since it scared him so much as a kid, does he hold on to any of that residual fear? Or did he let it go and now it's all just fun and games?
Yeah, when I talked to him, he said he hasn't really watched it since then. He hasn't seen it again.
Watch
so it hasn't been a long time, so
he really needs to. I think.
But he's just like, oh man, yes, I just remember the monster coming up and being on the porch and jiggling the handle and. And so I told him, I was like, I said, Falk Monster Plumbing. But
I hope he listens to our episode because I want him to hear all the hilarious things you had to say.
But so random there. But back to Lewis Creed here and Pet Sematary. He has this encounter with Victor, and so great first day in the new job. And then immediately is haunted by visions of him even at home, to where he sleepwalks, even though he thinks it's all a dream, because he wakes back up in bed, but then dirty, dirty feet. I do have to question, just why is Lewis sleeping in his scrubs? Like, at first I was like, oh, that should be a sign that he's dreaming, because what moron would sleep in his scrubs that he's worn at the hospital all day? Oh, Lewis would. He's the moron that would. What a weirdo.
You know, if you go walking after midnight, you never know what you're going to find out there.
Mm-hmm.
But Victor does give him that, warning not to cross the barrier.
Yeah, he's like, well, this is the place where the dead talk. He says, do not go to the place where the dead walk. And I was like, Atlanta, yes.
Yes, we've been there. That was fun.
And this highway, the trucks in Murder Truck, Maine are a big problem. So they're worried about the cat, worried about Church, so they, try to take care of that issue, but yet Church still winds up dead. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But Lewis knows that Ellie is going to be devastated, and so their neighbor Judd has a plan. We must go beyond the cemetery, right? And he should know that that's an immediately terrible idea.
That's a really bad idea.
Yeah. Why would Judd want to do that in the first place? Again, I'll talk about it when we get to Judd.
Pake, I think we need to add that soundbite to our podcast now.
Do I need to get a soundboard? Is that what you're telling me? Is I need to invest in a soundboard?
Yeah. Just so you can play.
That could be really
couldn't it? I feel
maybe for next season. Maybe for next season we might do that. We'll see.
I feel like after 3 years of podcasting, we can graduate to having a soundboard. We can have that on there.
Might just be a next season situation. That would be fun.
You can add the feedback phone on for one.
Yeah. Stop having to do it off of my phone.
Exactly. Right? It could be so much fun. Love it.
Yeah. So bad idea. Judd's full of bad ideas, but usually are when you're the villain of the movie.
I don't think he's the villain.
I don't know. We'll discuss that.
We'll discuss it, or I'll just say no.
We'll discuss that. But yes, takes him out. He's got this bright, wonderful idea. Yes, this ancient burial ground of runic symbols. It's totally not going to become a problem at all. With the old man speaking cryptically about reasons and rules. Yep, totally normal situation.
Well, it's a Micmac burial ground.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's, this Micmac native tribe make up a lot of that area of the country, at least did.
It goes into it a lot more in the book.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of key things that are explored further in the book, but I'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah. Which was interesting, though, because Lewis just seems to run with it, but he has no idea what he's doing. He's like, so we're going to bury... It's like, I can't tell my daughter. What do? We bury the cat. Oh, yeah, that... Sure, makes sense. So we just bury it here? No, we go on this all-day hike to this really creepier, in a different way, looking place, and bury it there.
And we have to climb up all of these things, but luckily Judd knows all the branches to step on. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget the terrifying trip that they took to the Pet Sematary in the first place. That's terrified Ellie.
I mean, that place is just the epitome of creepy.
Yes.
Judd knows every step. How many times is he going there?
I don't know.
As a villain, you might go there a lot. Anyway.
He is the villain.
But now he's got to keep up this lie to his daughter, even though, what is he planning to keep up? Because in his mind, the cat's dead. He just buried it in a different place for reasons. That old man said.
Yeah.
Doesn't expect it to come back. But then, he's talking to his daughter. He's talking to Ellie on the phone. And he's just like, well, I haven't seen Church all night, so I don't know. And then has this kind of like, oh, kiss your own cat. Because he's not going to lie directly, but as long as lies of omission are fine, right? But then he has this weird look on his face because when Gage comes on the phone, he's like, I love you, Daddy. And it's like Gage talking to him on the phone. His face is like, oh my God, this kid is the worst thing ever. It's like, why do you hate your son so much? No, I'm sure it's supposed to be that he's like agonizing the fact that he just lied to his daughter, so he's like out of the moment. But it was kind of just a weird timing on that face. I was like,
yeah.
Your son's talking to you. Why do you look like you hate everything about what's happening right now?
Well, I'm going to shift your perception of this for just a minute and tell you that the first choice or person that was offered the role of Lewis was Bruce Campbell.
That would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
Perhaps groovy even. But he goes to bed, you know, living with his lies. Then, oh my God, church is back again. But now he's mean, blame your elderly friend. Because he's just a mean old cat. Or is he? I mean, he brought Lewis a toy and or snack for his bath, trying to be really nice and friendly, and Lewis is so ungrateful, yelling at the cat. I mean, I'd hiss and have my eyes glow at him, too, if he treated me like that kind of things. But,
hey, the glowing eyes were not an effect. Those were real.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't, they didn't
Cat's
do any
eyes with
camera
lights
effects
are very interesting.
They really are.
Yeah. But, yep, family comes back home. I don't want to feel like I'm carrying things too much or recapping too much, but so you butt in or cut me off anytime you want. But
can I?
Sure.
Well, let me start with the following. Judd is not the villain.
We'll talk about that.
No. No, I think Lewis was a decent guy. I think his biggest issue was, despite listening and taking the cat to be neutered so he wouldn't wander around, his misconception was this. One, living in Chicago, I'm not sure that Church was running around outside all the time. No. This is a brand new environment, and even if you have him neutered, it's not going to stop. At this point, I don't think it stops him from running across the street.
Right. Well, we got him snipped. Now he won't go 10 feet that way.
Right.
It's not how it works.
It's not going to happen. A lot of people who live in rural areas think it's okay to let their cats out and roam around. But there are things that can kill the cat. Not just the road and the big trucks, but like there are fishers and other wild animals that can, attack the cat too. He should have paid attention. A lot of times, even if your cat is an outdoor cat or an indoor-outdoor cat like this one, you keep him inside for quite a while at the beginning.
I mean,
until it gets used to like the new surroundings.
Yeah, it's not that much different wildlife-wise between here and there. I mean, there's some, but I mean, I know here in Texas, I mean, there's so many coyotes and foxes and bobcats and hawks that, you don't just like let them run around all the time.
No, you don't. You don't. And even Judd warns him by telling him to get him neutered. Okay, that's not enough. He should, though, have taken the warning and realized the cat needed to stay inside.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he went to a vet. He should have talked to the vet about it. If a cat hasn't been running around by the roadside, they're not going to understand those dangers. It's not a situation where if you have two cats at home and one cat bats the other cat upside the head, well, they might know not to go back near that cat again. Well, with the road, it's a much more permanent solution when a vehicle runs you over.
Yeah.
As a cat. So I guess that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Not that Church would know anything about that, though. Anyway, we'll talk about that.
We will. You keep talking about it, but we're not getting to that point yet. So let's
eventually.
mosey on down there.
We'll mosey on down the road. All right. Yeah. So it's not the cat because the cat was never dead, as far as Ellie knows. But still, this cemetery has really messed with her. Plus some other things I wonder about Ellie. But again, that's another thing I'll talk about. But she's really questioning a lot of that, which kids do. And I like that they have that kind of conversation in the movie. It's like, well, we need to talk to our kids. Even Jed is like, well, kids need to know about death and understand it. So it's a good way to do that, which, I think they totally should. Maybe not in a way that like traumatizes them for days on end and they can't sleep at night. But you know, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I don't think Judd meant to terrorize her by taking her to
Right.
the Pet Sematary. I think that, when he's talking about the dead speak, he follows that up with some other information, so it wasn't quite so scary.
Yeah.
Like, this is where they are, they're spirits.
You can put things on the tombstones to where they kind of like talk about their life. Things like Biffer, a hell of a sniffer. Until he died, he made us richer. Which they really forced the rhyme on that one. Maybe we could workshop something a little better.
I don't know. Maybe
our
AI
love won't differ. Boom, fixed it for you right there. Go back.
Yeah.
But
You want to go around with whiteout or some sort of something so you can change it?
Maybe.
It's
a permanent stone. You could have come up with a better rhyme. You had time.
It's a very sad place, though. I mean, you see dog collars and tags and even a fishbowl at one point.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very sad place. And as I just recently lost a pet, watching it made me feel a little bit sadder, especially when we got to that part because, I lost one of my ferrets. And yeah, it was really extra sad to see that. But also you feel a little bit of, well, they buried them here to remember them. So that kind of, was the flip side of that.
Mm-hmm. But now all of this living in Ellie's head, we have Lewis having this conversation about death and after and such with his daughter, which was actually really nice. We see Rachel kind of listening in, and it affects her a lot emotionally, which we learn about later, why these kind of conversations are really difficult for her. But yeah, I just see them talking about, well, many different people believe this, and I'm just thinking now Ellie, have you ever heard of Carl Sagan? Perhaps Courtney and Privet?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Let's talk about Stardust.
Okay. No, I don't think that rings true to her. I don't think it's something she's understood before.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I like to go to. That would have been my conversation. It's like, Stardust. We're all Stardust. But Ellie is really kind of hooked on this idea of wanting to have faith in especially after what happens with Gage, which I skip over a lot of that right now because we'll talk about it more in depth later, I'm sure. But when she's having this faith in God taking it back or him being able to come back, and she's like, well, can I have faith in that? Because Lewis brings up this idea of faith. It's like this new word to her, this, you can believe something. And she's asked, is it okay if that's what I believe, if that's what faith I want to have? And because of the things he's learned through what happened with church, there is this possibility. And I think it definitely pushes him forward into this idea of using this ancient burial ground with the situation with his son. Although I don't know, he's seen the first, he's seen some of what happens when he's used it before, because him and Church do not get along anymore. He really hates that cat for being not dead, doesn't he?
Oh, really? You mean fuck off hairball, fuck off hairball? Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and here's another part for your soundboard. I was denied critical need to know information.
Yeah.
Judd did not share all of the information that was necessary when he took Lewis to the burial ground.
Of course not.
It all comes out in the end, but he didn't share the information that was need to know. It might have changed.
If he shared it with him before, then maybe his agenda would not have been taken care of the way it was supposed to.
There's no agenda.
We'll talk about it.
Oh my goodness.
How many times am I going to say that?
I don't know, but it's a drinking game in this podcast.
Right.
In this episode. Take a shot when Peg says, we'll talk about this. Yeah.
And then by the time we get to the Judd section of the podcast, you'll be too drunk to even listen to the rest of it. Yeah, so after things happen with Gage and this conversation with Ellie, Lewis has it in his head that, well, it worked for church, but did it really? But it worked.
No,
so
it didn't work for church. But
it'll be different. We can, do this here. And I don't blame him, but he really hates Rachel's parents. He will not go to their place for any reason whatsoever, and he will always stay behind by himself. That's what happened to churches during Thanksgiving, because he was like, I'd rather just not have a holiday than see your parents at all. So y'all go, and I'm just going to stay back here and plot their death. No, really hates them. But I mean, I don't blame him, because they're awful people, especially her father.
Oh my God, at Gage's funeral, the things that he said.
Mm-hmm.
He blames him, and I'm just like, that was wretched, and honestly, that would have been the end of it for me. Because I know that funerals can bring out the worst in people as far as emotions are running really high, and there's anger and hurt and frustrations. But the things that he said to him, there was nothing he could have done. He was playing with a kite. The baby was running toward the road. There were other people there that could have run. Like, it's not that he should not have dropped the kite or whatever, but he was distracted with the kite for the kids. I feel like sometimes he takes a lot of the brunt of this when it really goes beyond that.
Yeah. Now, however, in the things that happen later, I'm going to say Lewis isn't blameless completely, because now he's had conversations with Judd where he knows what can happen. He's heard this story of Timmy, Baderton? Something like that.
Baderman.
But yeah, he's heard these stories. He's been warned. He's like, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes, dead is better? Dead is better.
Or I was denied critical need to know information.
Well, at this point, he gets the critical need to know information.
Right.
A little
but it's
late
too late, really.
The cat. But he's pretty sufficiently warned, I think, for being like, do not even consider this for Gage. Yeah. And partially could have even been the reason this happened is because we played with it in the first place.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand. I don't follow that logic at all. Even listening to what Judd said, I was like, I still don't get it, but okay. Unless, but we'll talk about that. Anyway.
And if you're playing along at home, take another shot of whatever your liquor of choice is.
Right. So I will blame Lewis a little bit in going through with it. I mean, I can only imagine the temptation that he would be going through, knowing that it is possible. But he was warned of what would actually be coming back, and he's okay with just well, if that happens, I'll deal with it.
Do you understand what it would be like for you to have to take your child that you're still grieving? Well, if it doesn't work, I can always, take care of it. Do you understand what the words take care of it mean?
Put yourself through it again.
Right.
On hedging this small bet. And then it ends up even worse than that in the end because of his actions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he goes to dig up the body and go through with this, which the police car kind of going through and searching, it's got the spotlight right on the grave. Oh, there's nothing here but a freshly dug up grave with a bag of supplies on the ground.
I wondered about that too.
Guess I'll just mosey on by. It's all clear.
That didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, knowing the curiosity of the people of Maine, I don't know about that. I just feel like
Mm-hmm.
We can't stop ourselves sometimes.
Right, but, he's, like I said, he's been warned of how terrible of an idea this is to take Gage to the burial ground, and yet, because he's overcome and stricken by grief, obviously he's gonna do it anyway. And so he does that, goes home, goes to bed, and all that grave robbing and necromancy, it must have really tired him out, because he didn't even hear his undead son come in and dig through his bag, He's he wakes up the next morning, there's footprints everywhere, and he's checking his bag. It's the scalpel's missing. How do I gauge this situation? But
here's the thing. He wanted to wait for his son. I don't understand how he could go to sleep if he was waiting.
Right.
He seems to have rectified that by the end.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to that part.
Yeah. But then the phone call, which again, something else I'll also talk about more when I focus more on Gage and some other stuff as a character. Even though, is it really Gage at this point? Probably not. But
there are other things. Yeah, there's other stuff that comes from the book that that I'm going to talk about a little bit.
But Gage is ready to play a game. This has become Saw. He played with Mommy. He played with the neighbor Judd, and so Daddy's time to play. He goes over to the house like, Gage, you made such a mess of the neighbor's house. You got your ancient arcane evil all over the place. And he's like, okay, let's play, Gage. I see that you played with Judd and Mommy just like I played with Church outside. So now we're going to see who outplays who. And you win round one, you sadistic little Chucky doll. But needless to say, I win round two and the game. Which is, it's kind of this like little moment though, like he injects that with the needle, and then he's just like that. He immediately goes back to this like little boy for a second, and is like, "No fair." Whereas it's like, no fair. Too bad, you evil possessed little twerp. The boo boo eyes aren't gonna save you now. You're done for. And then immediately, after burning the house down to the ground, and he should have like. Yep, I really fucked up, made the worst decision ever imaginable. Let me wash my hands of this and start over. No, immediately he unlearns the lesson he just was taught, and he takes Rachel to the burial ground. And then we'll just end it with like a clickbait title. And what happens next will shock you, because it absolutely doesn't shock you in any way whatsoever. Like, oh, obviously, of course.
He should have learned from the beginning. He didn't take those lessons. The soil in a man's heart is stonier.
Lewis.
He tried. Victor Pascow did try to share some wisdom, but he was instrumental in getting Lewis's.
Maybe if he was like a better like spectral sidekick character, you know. Victor Pascow, the friendly ghost, didn't take off as well. He's just not quite as cute as Casper.
No.
I don't know. Maybe it's the exposed brain and like skull fragments. Who knows? But yeah, his kind of trajectory never really took off. We don't get the show of Victor Pascow, the friendly ghost. He doesn't get his spin-off. He doesn't get to be the lovable ghost as much.
That's one of the things I think of when people say, oh, Pet Sematary, 1989. I think of that. But it's not the main thing. There's one scene. I feel it still. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. But yeah, we talked about the end of Lewis. So unless you've got some more notes about him that I ran right over like an Orenco truck.
I just want to say this. As he was a doctor of medicine, I thought it was interesting that he was so quick to start believing in some of what Judd was selling with the burial ground, and because he just seemed to be a little more grounded in science, and I thought that was kind of a quick turn.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know, because Judd doesn't really tell him anything about it until after he's already seen Church come back. So it's like, because he's trying to question. He's like, I keep telling myself that I just buried him alive and he dug out and came back home, but
no, he was stuck to the ground.
Yeah, clearly not. But so Judd would be next, so people can maybe stop their drinking game and save their livers and their minds for the rest of the episode.
You're not going to convince me. You can try. It's not going to happen.
All right, so let's...
I think Judd wanted something good to happen. I think he never should have told him about the burial ground.
Right.
But I don't think he did it in a malicious way.
It doesn't have to... Villains don't have to be malicious. They just have to do bad things.
Okay.
Now, of course, these Victor Pascow visions that first night are saying the soil of a man's heart is stonier. And it's this, conversation that he ends up having with Judd. It's the word for word, the exact same thing. So he was being warned earlier, didn't even realize exactly who he was being warned against, but Judd knew what he was doing and had him do it, knowing full well what he was doing. Is Judd the bad guy?
No, he didn't do it. He wasn't the bad guy.
I mean, knowing everything that he knew, it's like, oh yeah, I've done this once before. With my dog, Spot. He came back vile and aggressive, and it was a terrible mistake, so I decided, let's do the exact same thing to your cat, because I'm a psychopath, Lewis. I need help.
No,
Someone needs to stop me.
He thought that maybe because Church's death was recent, or had happened in a shorter time frame, that there might be a different outcome. He didn't do it just to be mean. He didn't want Lewis to do all this. He didn't have to do it. To me, the definition of a bad guy is someone
I think he wanted him to do it, but not to be mean, but to appease those dark spirits of the burial ground that have control over him and tell him what to do. Because how many times has he been there? Why does he know the path so well? How long has he been feeding bodies to this ancient burial ground and using other people to do it? He's been there for so long.
Oh my goodness.
No,
I'm not.
He's the keeper of the grounds. Why does he know all these things about it? He's the keeper of the grounds, and they allow him whatever, as long as he continues to keep feeding bodies to it from time to time. And he feels bad about it, but he still does it.
Pake, if he would have died a long time ago.
Why is that?
Because if he had done something like this before, it would have ended
It's the first time he
had
used a human body, but... Because here's the thing. Did a truck hit church? Did a car hit church? I don't think so. That body didn't look like it was hit by a vehicle. It was quite further up into the yard.
Well, because if an animal gets hurt, it crawls up. It crawls off the road.
Almost as if Judd killed Church himself in order to set these things in motion.
No. If you read the book, you will learn that is not at all what was going on. So, no.
I will say, I haven't read the book, but apparently it does spell out that Judd is controlled by the burial ground to some degree. There is a supernatural connection between the two. There is
a supernatural connection that ties to a Wendigo. I mean...
So maybe we'll sprinkle some of that into the movie a little bit by... The whole thing with Church was what started it. Because he's really saying it's his fault. Is he saying it's his fault because he just said, oh, let's take the cat there?
Because he told him about it.
Knowing that it would, if he knows so much about it, that it would, awaken something, and something would want to pull things back in. So then he says, oh, I don't think he knew that it was going to lead to Gage until it did. And then he goes, yep, because of the things that I did, that started that path. I'm going with it. Because why else would somebody who has seen the things that can happen and knows exactly what happened would even contemplate going, that's the idea, that's the plan I'm going to tell this guy. This wonderful family here, let's ruin their entire lives with a zombie cat.
No, he cared about them. He cared about the kids. He didn't want Ellie to be destroyed. Because what you don't get in this version of the movie is you don't really get to see how Judd and the Creeds got to be really good friends, and they were very close. And there is a lot in the book about the Wendigo, and ties to black magic, and some different things. The Wendigo's the reason the ground went sour, not Judd.
Well, he's not the reason it was sour, but he keeps feeding it after it has. It's just a conspiracy theory that I, was feeling some stuff, and so I went to Reddit, and there is a whole other group of people who are on the same wavelength. And I wonder how many listeners are as well. I am curious to know what people think. But I mean, he knows so much. He's talking to Lewis. It's like, you asked me if a person's ever been buried up there, and yeah, once, and he came back as a zombie monster. So me and my buddies torched him and his father alive in their home. So what I'm seeing is the two biggest causes of misery in this town are trucks and Judd Crandall.
No. There was more to the story of the kid that got buried and came back. Because the father, Bill, actually... They didn't go and burn the house down. The father actually shot the kid and lit a match before he shot himself. He burned it down. It wasn't Judd and his boys.
Yes, but this is an adaptation, so they'll change things. And I'm going to go on this conspiracy rant of, in this adaptation, Judd's the villain.
No. No, we're going to disagree on this. You're not going to change my mind.
So he's not... He is, because he's a likable guy. He's a likable guy. I'll give him that. So his death at the end is still sad, but it's not just, oh, he's just an innocent bystander who got caught up in it. No, he paid his comeuppance for the things he's done.
And then we're going to disagree on this because you're not going to convince me, so don't. There's no point in trying anymore. You're not going to change my mind.
I saw a damaged man, a man who means good, but has some kind of dark secret and dark bind that makes him do things that he may not be proud of, but he'll do them anyway. For what? Some reason. No.
One other thing that you didn't get to see in this adaptation is the book explains a lot more, or goes through Lewis debating whether or not to bury Gage up there. Like, it wasn't just okay, I'm going to do this. It was like he really had to contemplate it. Like, it was gut-wrenching for him to do. We didn't get to see that because it, honestly, in the movie, it seemed like it was, I'm going to shuffle you off to the in-laws, and I'm going to go do this. And I'll have a surprise waiting. When you all come home, it'll be Gage. He'll be back with us.
Mm-hmm. Surprise. He's a zombie boy. He's a zombie boy. Zombie boy.
Oh,
with zombie boy toys. Like scalpels. Anyway.
Oh, man. And if you understand what that came from, wow.
But yeah, so that's really all that's my indictment on Judd. I mean, my section on Judd.
Yeah. So Judd and Gage have the one scene that sticks with me and I think of with this movie. And it basically was reaching out from under the bed or under a blanket and slicing into Judd's Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like that scalpel got in there a lot quicker than it should have. Nonetheless, I think of that every time and it makes my ankle hurt. It's like, oh God. So much so that whenever I'm coming home and it's dark outside, I'm always afraid there's going to be some sort of a hand that reaches up under the stairs and slices my ankle. Not
Very
always, but
specific
sometimes.
fear. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it? But it's true.
Just get home, Gage.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so those notes on Judd, if you have any more.
Well, I wanted to mention this little tidbit that I found. Mary Lambert really wanted Fred Gwynne for this role. They weren't really buying it because they thought, and they being the producers, thought that Fred Gwynne, aka Herman Munster, would not be a fit in this movie because he had been Herman Munster and the star of such a fun TV series. They didn't feel he could do this, but she really persisted until she won. He was her first and only choice for the role. She wanted him.
Mm-hmm. She did
and she got him, job, and I think, he did a great job. So are we going to move on with Ellie?
Yeah, well, I just kind of have it all thrown together. Rachel, Ellie, Gage, just kind of the rest of them all mixed in. Just talk about those different storylines and things that are going on. But, to start with, go back to the beginning. So we talk about them moving in and things that happen with, Ellie's the first one to notice this stone-lined path that goes to the cemetery, and she's intrigued about it, as is everybody else. And then we have Judd kind of saying, oh, it's definitely an interesting story. I'll tell you all about it. Lead you there. Make you bury your cat. My plan's all coming together. But, yeah, we just kind of meet the family, see how things are going. Ellie, very precocious, very sassy, very funny. Also, I have a question about her, kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but, she's having these dreams. She's talking about, that Lewis and Mr. Crandall buried Church in a pet cemetery. What a crazy dream, ha 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 ha. And then she even mentions, Victor Pascal by name. I'm gonna have to question with Ellie these dreams, and especially the one where she's talking about, I had this dream about Pascal and Gage and Dad. These are things that have not happened yet. It's not a dream, it's a premonition.
Are you
is
going to ask
Ellie.
me if she can see?
Does she shine?
Yes, she can shine. Yes, she shines.
Because that is a very common through line through a lot of King's work. And so that's immediately what I picked up on when she's talking about these dreams and stuff. I was like, she's got the shine.
If we ever do Children of the Corn, there is a child in that one that I think you would be intrigued by.
Nice. Because, yeah, I've seen it pop up in a lot of different things. I think even The Stand has some of that as well. Yeah, it's one of those, even though it's like the King universe, where they're all kind of not necessarily the, same universe or same stories, but they kind of are. And like, he throws these, like, these abilities of seeing the future or knowing things that other people don't or hearing conversations that other people can't into a lot of characters across his entire universe. And it's kind of this through line. If it's a Stephen King, story, is somebody's got, somebody shines. Which I love that.
Yeah, I think that we can admit that Ellie is the sole survivor of this family after everything that's happened.
That's what it is. I was like, we covered something else. And it's not even Stephen King, but it is Stephen King adjacent as far as it's his son, Joe Hill. But even the sister in the Black Phone.
Yes. Yeah. It's a bigger world, and now we have the world adjacent.
Gwen also seems like quite a shiner, right?
Yeah. And what kills me is the family's quick disregard of it. Like, they just don't seem to acknowledge it at all. Like,
right. Until Rachel starts seeing it as well.
Yeah.
Which, like, to what extent? Because, like, even, like, it helps her get the car and, like, get on the plane. Where I was like, wait, is the Ghost of Pascal able to interact and guide anyone, anywhere at will? Because there's a whole new level of supernatural power that we're just going to glance over and move on from. Like, hang on. What is he capable of?
I think so.
Where did this guy come from?
I think so. He's talking about the car with the big scratch.
Yeah.
And
he, like, basically mind controls this, like, rental agent into giving her the car. I was like, man, that could be a whole different movie on its own. How did this guy come to be? Just throw that in there. But yeah, I jumped ahead. But yeah, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that. I'm sure you picked up on that as well.
Oh,
being a
definitely.
Stephen King fan as well.
I like these little throw-ins because, I mean, Stephen King has said in the past that, yes, there are connections within his stories to each other. A lot of it ties in with Randall Flagg.
A lot of it's a lot of Dark Tower stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all,
But there are other parts that do connect as well. And this is one that I don't think people point out that often. Or maybe they do, and I'm just not that deep into a Stephen King, Facebook group to know that it's such a big deal or has been pointed out before.
Yeah, but we see little Gage there, young Gage. He loves throwing stuff like food at cats and sisters, or himself at traffic. What, too soon? Too soon about the fictional character that sets in motion the whole main plot of the movie. But the other thing that I thought was strange was the housekeeper, where she just. It was like such a random. So she's like, "Oh, I'm hurting. My stomach hurts. I don't feel good." And then she's like, "I have cancer." And then she just hangs herself because she's sick. And I'm like, "Oh, if only she knew a doctor
who offered to help her on multiple occasions." Yeah.
If only she knew a doctor that she saw on regular weekly basis. Oh man. And then they just moved on from that. It was very. I'm sure the book probably has a lot more for her. I'm going to assume so, because it seemed like just such a random thing.
Judd has a wife in the book named Norma, and she's much more of a grandmotherly type, which also the book shows this connection that the Creeds have with Judd and his wife. And they take the death of his wife really, really bad. But the suicide that you're talking about was not taken as such a big deal. I kind of was like, why are you putting this in here?
It's just, it feels very random.
And, it's disconnected from other things. And then when I read about, oh, well, Judd had a wife and this and this and this, you start to understand. It's like, okay, you really didn't need to put it in there because it doesn't really matter in the terms of telling the story.
Yeah. See, when the family comes back, and that they're coming off the plane, just a random background catch. Pretty sure the kid in the blue sweater got off that plane twice.
They're not scanning bracelets like they do when you go into the fair, so it doesn't matter.
It's just one of those things I just picked up on. I was like, it's one of those things because you shoot several different shots. You know, you take the scene in different takes and then you mix it together to like what looks good. But the same background actor got off the plane twice in the movie, and it made the cut. And it's like, he already walked down those steps. He
might have had to go back to get something.
There it was. He left his teddy bear. He wasn't carrying a teddy bear. He left something. He left his phone. No, it was 89.
No. We didn't have phones at that time.
Left his
Portable
Switch.
phone.
We know that Switches were a thing back then, because the kids wanted one in Boggy Creek last week, right? No, anyway. Rachel, I mentioned her having this quite an intense childhood drama about death with her sister.
Oh my god, her sister Zelda.
Some really dark and disturbing stuff there that she's really been dealing with. Makes her not want to talk about that stuff at all. But also, I kind of agreed with Lewis. He's like, well, if I didn't already have a reason to think your parents were garbage, I do now. Like, man.
You know what? I thought Zelda was a fun adventurer. I had no idea that she was a bedridden sister.
More you know. Yeah, it's just, I don't even know how to like talk about it too much. It's like, yeah, it was just like really fucked up. And
this is another.
Kind of feel bad for Rachel, for sure.
Yeah, this is another fucked up part of this movie that sticks with you because you see it and it scares you when you see. I still got scared when I just rewatched it. It's like, ugh. I mean, it's like, never get out of bed again. I mean, traumatizing. It's traumatizing. Yeah,
for sure.
And her parents were just, that's where I think parents, when you have one child that is going through something extraordinary like this, you really have to be careful how you manage the care for the child that is having the problem and your care for the child who isn't. Because one, it can cause the issue where the child who doesn't have an issue starts to feel like the child who is having an issue is getting more of your love. I mean, that's one piece of it. But then also wanting her to take care of her sister. And I think that's a bit, I mean, the situation is just really difficult to maneuver in.
Yeah. Speaking of disturbing and hard to watch scenes, then we get to the big one with Gage, of course. All I had to question was like, what do they manufacture at Orenco? Oh, despair. That's all it is, because that's all that they're good for. You would think that they would have some kind of speed limit enforced or something on that road. Just a simple, like, children playing sign. Something. Anything, really.
Yeah, they're not. Most rural roads in Maine, that is not the speed limit. As fast as that truck was going is not how fast you would normally go.
Yeah, they're just like flying down. I mean, the very beginning of the movie, one of the first things we see after like the opening credits shot of the cemetery is then the speeding truck of foreshadowing. You know, and it's like, we see that. It
sounds like the trucks that I hear when we're just hanging out on Zoom. I'll hear a truck in the background. On your end,
but I live next to a highway,
right?
Not like a little rural, like yeah, bad roads for pets, which and sometimes people. Yeah, I'm familiar with that concept because my dad lives right on a sort of similar road to that. I lost a number of pets growing up that way. They actually did end up having to alter that road by my dad's house eventually for visibility because there was such a high number of accidents and things happening because it's like, it was called like Dead Man's Curve or something for a while because there was literally like, it would like, you can't see my hand gestures, anybody listening, but like there's like this little hill and then like immediately cars come over the hill and then it like turns in and they had to alter it and like change that road a little bit because people could be flying over that hill and not see something that's in the road like 10 feet in front of them. Because by the time you come over that hill and around that curve, Like, there's no slowing down. There's no stopping.
Yeah, it's a problem. And there are roads like that. I mean, especially if it's not on the main drag. A lot of the back roads in places are like that. And so there are speed limit signs. And I've seen a lot of children at play signs to try to, you know, let people know. But there are also a lot of roads that just don't have those. And again, when you know this, I don't know why they didn't build a fence. Like, they were there for long enough that they could have taken some precautions. And again, I'm trying, it's not about victim blaming. I'm just trying to think about solutions that might have prevented it.
Yeah. Because that scene itself, definitely rough. You know, I can make jokes about it all day long, but when it comes to actually watching, but when it comes to actually watching the actual scene, it's honestly just like really fucked up and super sad. And then we talked about the funeral scene, like right after, just adds to that roughness. Because I'm like, oh yeah, Rachel's dad really is pure trash, isn't he? Oh, but yeah. So I'll joke about it all day long, but also like watching that scene, I'm like, yeah, this is still really sad and really fucked up, and I hate it.
Yeah. Interesting thing about the young actor who played Gage, Miko Hughes. They normally cast twins for the roles of younger children because then they can swap them out. Yeah. And because there are limits on the amount of time that kids can be like working. They didn't with him. They decided to move forward with just him because he was perfect for the role. They felt, you know, that they had to move forward with it.
Incredible for such a young actor.
Yeah.
Just a lot of those things. But yeah, interesting. So, back on like Rachel and stuff. So they're back to her parents' house. Of course. Yeah. Lewis is not going, even if he wasn't trying to stay back to necromance their son. He wasn't going to go anyway.
He might have had better luck taking him to the guy that the, vampires on What We Do in the Shadows go to.
Right.
He seems to have a little better luck with it.
Yeah. I mean, they're still zombies, but they're fun zombies. I couldn't help but just keep noticing the painting in Rachel's parents' house of this like kid with like a top hat and this like whip and a hurricane and the cat with him. It's absolutely hideous. It is a terrible, terrible painting. Of course, when we do see Gage, he is dressed just like that horrifying painting with the gray cat along with him too, right?
Just really, like, it looks somewhat historical, but almost like a satire at the same time. It just didn't...
Right.
Yeah, it didn't sit right.
It's terrible painting.
It's terrible.
Now, as far as Rachel coming back to meet her end, it seems kind of strange. I know, like, there's the Pascal of it all after talking to her daughter, and Ellie's got her extreme concern. It kind of gives her more of a push to think something is wrong. But there is this kind of like, oh, my husband isn't answering the landline phone, and he could just be out getting a burger, like my mother said. But obviously the thing to do is to hop on a plane and fly home immediately.
Well, it's because of Ellie, as you just said. It's because Ellie, I had a bad dream. Pascal, and that's when Pascal's ghost comes into play and starts talking her through everything. And when she decides she best be getting home.
Yeah, then it makes a little more sense. But at first it's like, I'm going to go home, because she said that even before like Pascal showed up. And it's like, that's where you're going to go with this? It's like he literally could be outside, like, doing anything. But yeah, she does. She goes back home. There's kind of this, her car that she does get this rental, and then it even like breaks down because it's trying to stop you from, it's trying to, keep you from stopping it. Because Judd stopped doing his job, so it's got to take matters into its own hands.
I think the point was Victor Pascal was trying to get Rachel home to stop it from happening, but I also started thinking maybe if he hadn't encouraged her to go home, she'd still be alive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really trying to figure out what was the best thing. I mean, if Lewis hadn't even told Rachel what he did, So she didn't even think about what he would try to do.
Well, she didn't even know anything about church. None of this was even on her radar at all.
She had no idea. And so in the end, she paid a huge price with her life. Mm-hmm. And she did not look real great. Mm-mm. She was like Two-Face.
Yeah, it was. I can imagine just like how terrifying it's like to get home, something is off, and then like, oh, and there's your dead toddler son, but he's not. He's like, I brought you something, Mommy, and she's like, oh, Gage, a scalpel used to murder an old man. How thoughtful! What a good boy.
Yeah, and if she
just what I've always wanted.
If she had gone home first instead of going into Judd's house, but she heard the laughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which I said, the car broke down, so she gets a ride from one of those Orenco trucks, which opened the door and hop in, babe. And I'm like, yeah, that's the guy we should immediately trust to give us a ride. Rachel, good thinking. It's the guy that talks like that.
That does not seem safe.
They pull up to the house, and I just imagine the truck driver being like, oh, I know this place. My buddy Joe hit a little boy over here a while back. Crazy coincidence, huh?
Oh, my God. I honestly, when I saw it, I first thought it was going to be the same driver.
Mm-hmm. That would have been something.
I mean, can you imagine?
While this is all going on, Gage has got he's doing some work.
He is, but Gage looked to be in decent shape considering there would not, going that fast, he would not have been, there would not have been enough of him to, you know what I mean.
You gotta have zombie Gage. Which, again, after killing Judd, I love Church is just sitting there with these yellow glowing eyes looking down at the body like, yes, that'll do, Zombie Gage, that'll do.
Well, and Lewis decided that he would, in knowing he had to go take care of Gage, he also took care of Church first.
Yeah.
In like this multiple step process.
We mentioned the phone call that gets Lewis to go over there knowing where Gage is. I really gotta say, man, dying and coming back as a zombie has done wonders for Gage's vocabulary and motor skills. I mean, he knew his own phone number to call his dad from the neighbor's house. Like, these things have really worked for him. Maybe, see if cursed Micmac burial ground therapy is right for your little one. Because it's really helped Gage. It's
tied to the magic of the Wendigo. Like, I think that it's just tied to that. And I feel like
motor skill, his creativity in the ways he can murder people, I think, yeah.
Would you tell me how he got his mother to hang herself or to up there and hanging? Because I couldn't understand that. He's got the strength of a Wendigo. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how. I guess we're not supposed to question that. But I do want to read the book now because I did some of the background research and what I've been able to discover. I'd like to read the book and be able to make the comparison. Yeah.
Too bad that Gage dies again at the end of the movie because he could have been a great spokesperson. Hooked on dark magic worked for me.
Really?
I mean, I'm impressed by the things he could do.
I really don't have any other notes on characters, but I have a couple of notes to share of things that I learned while.
Yes, that's also all the notes that I've got. I think I've finished up my adventure in Murder Truck, Maine.
And it scared you away from coming here to visit.
Yeah, I'm never going to that state with all the trucks that it has hiding behind every corner. Or even worse, I might run into a Judd Crandall. The worst villain of all.
You know what? You could run into a bunch of Judd Crandalls. You have no idea what's waiting for you. So, I have a couple of things. wanted to mention the Ramones a little bit. Stephen King's a big fan of the Ramones, but it was actually Mary Lambert who directed the film, but also has directed music videos, especially for Madonna. And she did her Like a Prayer video. She used some of her connections to get them to allow for Sheena as a punk rocker to be used, but then she got them to write Pet Sematary, specifically for this movie.
Which is a great song, but it just like, the way it just kicks in right at the end where it's like, and everybody's dead and it's the worst thing ever. And you're like, oh, we're happy again for some reason. All right.
So George Romero was originally going to make the movie, but decided to move forward with the movie Monkey Shines. It kind of went into obscurity, but they greenlit it during the 1988 Writers Guild of America strike because they didn't have a lot of things around. A lot of projects that they could do, but this one was ready to go. So they decided to move forward with it. Let's see. Interestingly, Judd mentions that a dog went wild in a nearby town and killed several people. In the novel, he mentions this. Well, that kind of is this reference to Cujo, which is another movie we should probably do. At some point. Let's see. Cats are somewhat difficult to train, so they had to use at least 7 different British short-hair cats to portray Church. Like a jumper, a snarler, a cuddler. And that tree, the tree that Ellie Creed is swinging on, wasn't there. They found it somewhere else and brought it there. They were having a hard time finding the right tree, and when they found it, they just ripped it up and moved it there. It's kind of interesting that they would decide to do that.
Whatever works.
So I have seen the house. I've driven by the house. The time that I did it was like a year or two after the movie came out, and the path was still visible.
You might have been answering the question I was going to ask with the next thing you said. I was going to say, are the two houses actually right across from each other like that?
Okay, so here's the difference. There is a house across the street. It is not that one. They actually built a frame around that house for Judd's house, so it looked different, because they wanted this dilapidated look of a house, and the house across the street did not look dilapidated enough for what they wanted to do.
Kind of reminds me, because I mentioned with The Quiet Place, because I've been to those spots, and it's, when you watch the movie, it's very much like, oh, like the house, their house, the Abbott's house, you just walk right across the street and you're at the barn, which is kind of true, but actually there is a little bit more road between them. Like, it's like, you can walk one to the other, but it's kind of like across the street and down the road just a little bit, and they kind of had to like shoot things a little differently and make their own little paths between them to make it seem like they're closer than they are, because it's like 2 separate properties across from each other versus one property.
Yeah. So when they built around the other house, they used fire resistant material because in the end the plan was to burn down Judd's house. So a lot of the pieces were filmed in different areas. Like the path going down is real. Doesn't quite look like that now. In fact, there are a couple explorers online who have released videos that they go to the different places so you can see, oh, wow, that looks different now, or whatever. The path goes down, but the place that they actually built the Pet Sematary was somewhere else. As well as the burial ground was also somewhere else. So they put them all, and then they wove it all together at the end, which was kind of cool. They had a couple of sound stages that they did a lot of the interior. They built these interior pieces. The hospital where Lewis worked was the outside, and the inside a bit was Ellsworth Town Hall. So I've driven by there and seen it. It's kind of cool when you know things have been filmed.
Yeah, I can tell that it was not filmed in an actual hospital because it looked nothing. Like, at first I was like, why are they dragging this person into a high school? Like,
It's City Hall.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of places that I've been. I liked being able to go to the house. There's a lot of cool places on that road, too, that weren't in the movie, but it's still kind of cool to see. So I mentioned the sequel, which was released in 92. It's loosely related as taking place a couple of years after the first one. There was a remake that was released in 2019. And now there's a prequel that's due to come out soon called Pet Sematary Bloodlines. There is also a 2017 documentary called Unearthed and Untold, The Path to Pet Sematary, that documents the making of the film, and the cast does participate in it. And I'm going to leave you with this, since we are coming back next week, and we will be covering the reboot, or the remake. The Machetes were interested in adapting the remake of Pet Sematary after they had finished the It films, but someone else got to it first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's all I have.
Nice. That was a fun one. So we did it.
We did.
We survived the zombie cats and boys and trucks, and we've made it through.
And you didn't change my mind.
Yeah, we'll see. Honestly, I've seen the 2019 one, so it'll be interesting to revisit. I don't remember a single thing about it though, so it'll be interesting to kind of go fresh into it again and rewatch it and see now how it stacks up to this one, having just watched this.
Yeah, there are some differences for sure. It'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, so I look forward to that. But right on cue, as it seems. Until then, we can maybe hear what people have to say about this one. So
I hope we get a lot of
answer
feedback.
that feedback phone. All right, and as I kind of hoped, we do have a good bit of feedback for Pet Sematary, which makes sense. It is a classic. So
absolutely.
I love that. So let's go ahead and get into it. This first one comes from Catherine. It says, Pet Sematary is one of my favorite Stephen King movie adaptations. The scalpel to the ankle makes me cringe every time. I do chuckle when Gage says, no fair, though. Reading the book fills in quite a few plot holes and makes the movie much more enjoyable.
I feel like, Peg, we're going to have to read the book.
I already have like a stack of Stephen King books that I own that I need to get through.
I know.
Plus a billion other books that I'm...
I know. And you're not getting to them because there's too much TV. There's too many other things to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
My whole life is just a non-ending, constant stack and stream of things I need to get around to, but not until I get around to other things I need to get around to.
So many things to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Alma says, I was just thinking of how scary this movie was to me when it first came out. I'm really glad y'all are doing this version and not the remake. The only thing that kind of bugged me was the little girl. She was a little annoying. Oh, and how crazy was the scene of the sick sister. That scene freaks me out to this day. Can't wait to hear y'all's thoughts.
All right. Well, good news, Alma. We love your feedback. We love to hear from you. And yes, that scene is very disturbing. Bad news? ? It's a double dip. Next week, we're covering the 2019 remake.
Yes, we are.
All right. This one comes from Kelly, who says, the scene with the sister traumatized me. I had nightmares for years after that.
Yeah, that was one of the creepiest things, too. Man. So, Sam says, the first horror movie I ever saw at the ripe old age of 4. Thanks, parents. Certain scenes are scorched in my brain. That little demon slicing the ankles, the tiny, bloody shoe post truck, the deformed sister drooling and screaming. Masterpiece.
There seems to be a through line in the past few comments about a certain thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Legend of Zelda has really messed with some people.
Yes. No Link involved.
No. This one comes from Wendy. Says, I wanted to name my potential son Gage. Brian vetoed this. Her husband.
Aww.
And, it's a great name. But yeah, I can see other certain names and stuff that I'm like, well, because of a movie or thing I watched, it's like, nope, forever ruined.
Yeah. True. Well, Randy couldn't believe that I haven't seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil. He thinks I'm really going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, as much as you enjoyed Little Evil in that conversation we had, like I mentioned when we covered that one, whether you agree with it or not, I'm slating Tucker and Dale for next season. It's happening. So
Okay. All right. We can do it. Well, we really appreciate all your feedback. If you would like to submit feedback to us, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Run for Your Lives Podcast. You can find us on X at RFYL Podcast. Email us, runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links that you're ever going to need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that is the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, we do. And speaking of sharing the love, of course, got to give some shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. First off, my other podcast, I'm still taking a hiatus from it, but Rima couldn't stay away. And then doing something fun that I joined the past 2 seasons that they did it, or at least 1.5 or so. But in a strange indeed turn of events for that podcast, sometimes we like to cover the Great British Baking Show or the Great British Bake Off, depending on what side of the pond you're on, what you're calling it. And as they air a new season in the UK, then the American audiences get it on Netflix a couple days later. So yeah, Rima has enlisted the help of some other guests. I don't know if it's rotating completely or not, but I know Wendy and Greg have been involved. Some Bake Off fans over there. Maybe Jason will pop in from time to time as they're going through this season. So there is some Bake Off coverage going week to week right now. I'm still kind of taking a break from it. Got a lot going on, but I love that they're covering that, and you should definitely give that a listen because it is so much fun when they cover Bake Off. And I had a blast the season that I really got to dive in on it and cook up some conversation, right?
You know what's cool, really. Pake? Mm-hmm. I heard a little rumor that a certain show is coming out next week.
Yeah.
And you'll be back at it.
Yeah. I've also mentioned Follow the House of Usher on Netflix, the final Mike Flanagan Netflix show before he makes his move over to Amazon Prime. Yeah, is dropping next week. If we get around to covering it right away next week, again, I will have to get with Rima on that. Don't expect. I'm not going to promise. And then we're jumping right on it because, yeah, there's music festivals and Boston meetup trips and all the kind of things going on right as it drops. But we will get on it as soon as we possibly can, and then we'll be covering that. So I'm super excited for more Flaniverse goodness. If you're a fan of Loki over on Disney Plus, season 2 just dropped, and that is exactly what I'm doing when we're done recording here. I cannot wait to watch that. But of course, over on Podcastica, the Lokiverse podcast has been recapping the first season, going back over those. So they're ready to jump in and get into this new season as it goes. So it'll be awesome to check out. And that is Alex, Sydney, and Kirk over there on that. That's going to be fun to listen to. Definitely check that out. Also, Disney Plus, Ahsoka is finally wrapped and done. The season finale? I don't know. We'll have to see what comes ahead in the future for Ahsoka. But it is over for now, at least, and you can go check Jonathan, James, and Kristen on their coverage of that this week when they put that up. And yeah, I loved it. I think Ahsoka was just an incredible show. I have a lot more things I want to say, but I won't because I'm not going to spoil anything. But yeah, go check out that coverage if you're a fan to hear all the great talking about Ahsoka. Also over on the Cast of Us, Jason and Lucy still going through The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, as Daryl has his adventures in France. And honestly, I've still just really been loving that show. It's been great to listen to Jason and Lucy every week talk about that one. And I'm really enjoying it. So if you are a Walking Dead fan hanging on with the Daryl Dixon story, definitely check out the Cast of Us coverage over there. And Greg and Veronica still going through their coverage of The Wheel of Time Season 2 on Amazon Prime. You can check that out. And then on Revisited, Ben and Kristen Ted Lasso, The Journey Has Begun, episode 2 this week. So believe in that podcast. I believe it'll be a lot of fun. And then some other great stuff going on. Of course, Adrenaline Cinema with a new episode this week. The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Jerry joining Mark on that one, so it should be a lot of fun. Make sure to go check that out. And then Panels to Pixels. New shows coming out on these kind of comic booky shows. Mark is going to be on that. Loki and The Boys Gen V there, which, yeah, The Boys, Amazon Prime. Gen V is a spin-off. The Boys, of course, based off of a comic book. Gen V has some ties to some comic book stuff, but it's really just its own unique original spin-off off of that world. But I am absolutely loving it so far. It's been nuts. It's just been off the wall the way that you want the Boys universe to be. So I'm really enjoying it so far. I'll be covering that. And I got to give our love to TV Podcast Industries with Derek, John, Chris over there. Always doing some incredible work, covering all the shows all the time. So of course you can catch Ahsoka, Wheel of Time, and The Boys Gen V coverage all going on over there on TV Podcast Industries. But aside from all those other amazing podcasts and fun things they're doing, you know you always can come back right here to Run for Your Lives. And I'd say, what are we doing next week? But we talked about it this week during the recording and just earlier. Is Double Dip, so people know what to expect.
Well, you know, when a family moves to rural Maine town, they get more than they bargained for. Well, you know the drill. It's part 2 of our Double Dip. As Pake said, it's released in April 2019, 30 years after the original. Pet Sematary is remade and somewhat reimagined, with Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer as the directors, and starring Jason Clarke, Amy Seimetz, and John Lithgow. So we will be covering, as we mentioned, Pet Sematary, the 2019 edition.
Yeah. So definitely come back for that one. I want to hear your thoughts on my Judd theories that Daphne doesn't seem to like. And does the second movie we covered, does the remake add, detract, change those theories? I don't know. You have to come back next week and see.
Yeah.
Want to know?
Yeah. Definitely want to know if Pake's alone, if you guys agree with me, or if you think I should listen to him. Let us know.
Or if I have trust issues of old men.
With that, we've reached the end of another episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.